It is a tale as old as time. Wait, no, that's the wrong musical. I'm going to give you my thoughts and review on the new Steven Spielberg film West Side Story right after the jump. Hello everyone, Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. Over the next couple of days, you're going to see quite a few of these Oscar or Academy Award type of films getting reviews here on this channel. I have screeners coming in. I'm going to sit there, watch some screeners and drink some wine and then come back and review it for you. West Side Story, however, is a bit of an outlier as they don't have screeners. Plus, this is something that I actually wanted to see in the theater and experience it, as some people have told me that I should. So, I just got back from the theaters from seeing Steven Spielberg's new film, West Side Story, and for me, it is a bit of a mixed bag. Let's talk about the positives. I don't think there is a person who should actively and without a shadow of a doubt be nominated for Best Director, but possibly not have their film nominated for Best Picture. Now it's going to be because they do two films and it should be one of those. When you get that far out, it's going to be one of those. Spielberg is directing his ass off in this movie. It is phenomenal to see the shots, the scope, the colors, the dance numbers, the musical. This is West Side Story on 5,000. It feels much bigger without taking some of the hard story beats away. It feels like a much bigger spectacle than I think anyone ever had any right to believe the West Side Story could be. This feels like you're watching the play, and sometimes when you're doing plays, you can see backstage, you can see the corners and everything, you can see all of that. This fills all of that in your imagination. Whatever you thought West Side Story should be in your brain, Spielberg throws it up there on the screen and delivers. The scope and even the small changes and tweaks and add-ons and updates and revisions that he do don't take away from the story at all. It feels like this all feels a part of what that is. I am a theater kid, so I dig musicals. Moulin Rouge is one of my favorite films of all time, even though it's still music, it's not original music, but I love musicals. But I think typical audiences may not. But musicals for me I love them. So I'm not going in this as a person who is like, I don't want to hear people just breaking out in a song. I dig that. You want to break out in a song, if you want to talk about your emotions through music, go for it. And I think for the most part, it works here. I think Rachel Zegler as Maria is fantastic and a delight to see. I think Anita, Riff, and Bernardo are all being played phenomenally. I think they are handling what they're supposed to be doing quite well. I think, for me, West Side Story has a problem. And this has just been the problem with the book for me in its entirety. I don't mind Love at First Sight stories. I think they're great. But there's a huge level of jumping from I see you from across the way and I'm madly in love with you. That this story has always sort of invited the audience to go along with. You're either in or you're out. It also eventually gets to the point where you have to be like, hey, even though this person may have murdered my brother, I still love him. And you just kind of have to go along with it. And for that to work, you have to believe that these two people are kismetly and just magically in love with each other. In the previous film, I felt that. In the many iterations that you see on Broadway or in stage, I feel that. I feel like Rachel is holding up her end of the bargain. She's playing Maria and doing everything humanly possible to make this work. But for that to work, there's a ping pong effect. Every actor is as good as the counterpart that they are working with. And for me, I'm not going into anything that this man is accused of. That is something for another day, not for me to talk about. For me, in this particular project, Ansel does not work. Every time that he's on screen, he buries, like he anchors the rest of the film. There's a witness and something that just does not charismatically come off as being the person that is supposed to love Maria with everything that he has. I never get that. And for me, because I don't get that from him, this entire story is linchpinned on that love story. If that doesn't work, if I don't get that from him and I don't get that from them as a couple, the movie then becomes more of an exercise as opposed to watching a love story. And that's where I sort of sat as this is going on. I said, man, Steven Spielberg is knocking this shit out the park. He's killing it. She's killing it. I love the fact that we have a diaspora of all different shades of colors of Hispanics on here, like Afro-Latina. Like you see some people that are like, how could they be African-American? Could they be not? Who cares? It's just gorgeous to look at on screen. And then we get to, then we get to Tony, and you're like, oh, this is where the movie takes it, slows down and gets to a drag. And even just the movement of it, like you see Riff dancing, and he is 70 times better as a dancer than anything that Tony is doing. And he's supposed to be our lead, our main person. I just never get behind Tony at all. And it sucks, because I think had that happened, I would be all in on this movie. Like, I'd be gushing about this from the rooftops. Like, you should see this. Now, this still think you should see this in the theater, but I can see why people are not rushing to go to the theaters to see it. Because when you have something like Ansel pimping Tony, then you start kind of pulling at the cracks. And you're like, yeah, at the end of the day, this is just West Side Story. Like, I know this story. I've seen it before. And yes, people do go back to the theaters to see things that they've seen before. But there's a difference about plays. Seeing a play that you've seen in live action so many times, it's easier to see them on stage because you're watching actors give up different performances. Some things will be heightened more than you would have than they were before, so you would have paid more attention to it than you would have the previous time you see it. When you see a film, you're seeing just that one version of it. Like, we've chosen these folks have been frozen in time, and this is going to be the sort of the iteration of West Side Story that you see all the time. I don't want this. Unfortunately. I loved everything else that is happening around them. Rita being back on screen and giving her a new song, it's perfect. I love the slight updates where she's sort of calling some of the ignorance and some of the taking the piss out of some of the things that the Jets do. It all works. It all works. It's just the Tony of it all. It is cool. I think it does. It takes some of the questionable things that the first iteration of this did and cleans them up a bit, PCs them up a bit, ethically puts them into a clearer range. Like I said, with Rita's character sort of calling out the boys and their attempt or attack on Anita. Just some things that are sort of like just not as rough around the edges. But the biggest thing is we don't have anybody playing brownface, which is great. We have actual people of their correct ethnicities playing parts, and that, if nothing else, is a delight to come back to this world, to revisit this play and kind of get a do-over for that. As far as like one being better than the other, I think it's more so a matter of which love story you tie into more. I wish the actors and actresses that we have in this were the two, were all a part of that original, and those two love leads were here, because I think that love chemistry worked better than what we got here. So, as far as I'm concerned, on that scale of play it again, Sam, hey, I didn't mind that Once Is Enough, or Give Me a Time Stone, so I never had to think about this film again. This sadly falls into that Once Is Enough. Like, I'll never watch this again. I have no desire to. I will give kudos to the director and all the cast outside of Ansel. I think they put their best foot forward, but when it comes down to being a love story, for me, it just does not work. And I realized about halfway through the film, like, oh crap, I'm no longer watching a film. I'm watching an exercise in filmmaking. I'm seeing Spielberg do crazy crane shots and overhead shots of the shadows coming in. I'm watching, like, oh my God, that's great. And I'm starting to care less and less about the characters as they go along, which is a terrible thing for a musical, considering the characters were there. That's what's on page first, before anything else happens, before you design a set, before you put on a production, before you film anything like that, before you get into the dance numbers. The very first thing that matters is the characters. And for me, even though I know these characters like the back of my hand, the performance of one of them in this is not up to par enough to make me care about the rest of the film. And so it just becomes an exercise in filmmaking. Very good filmmaking, mind you, but still an exercise in filmmaking nonetheless. Those are my thoughts on the West Side Story. What did you guys think about West Side Story? Leave your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, you can follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name that's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, any other place podcasts. We're there. And like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.